Welcome to the Deep Dive, the show where we take your burning questions, grab a whole stack of sources, and really just plunge right into the heart of things. Today, we're tackling an enigma. It's one that has haunted imaginations for decades. It's a place whispered about, synonymous with vanishing ships, lost planes, all sorts of inexplicable phenomena. The Bermuda Triangle. Is it really some kind of paranormal vortex? A place where the normal rules just don't apply? Or is there maybe a far more grounded, perhaps even more chilling explanation for its infamous reputation? Our mission today is really to move beyond just the fascination. We want to truly understand what defines this mysterious region. We'll dissect the legends, reveal the surprising scientific realities that often hide just beneath the surface. You're in for some compelling historical accounts, a deep dive into some truly fantastical theories. And ultimately, we're going to equip you with the hard facts, the stuff you need to separate the myth from the reality. Get ready for maybe a perspective shift.
It really is an area of the world that's captivated so many people for so long. And it's interesting when you start to really unpack the stories, you find the narrative as, well, it's far more complex than the simple mystery tales often suggest. We'll be looking at what makes this region geographically unique, maybe, and how a series of events, some genuinely tragic, got woven together, woven into this legendary pattern that just took on a life of its own.
Okay, so we've all heard the wild stories, right? But before we get too lost in the legend, let's get our bearings. Where exactly is this infamous triangle everyone talks about? Because I think many of us just have this vague, kind of scary blob in our minds. Our sources pin it down, roughly, at a watery triangle out there in the North Atlantic Ocean.
Yeah.
The general boundaries, for most definitions, are Florida, Bermuda itself, and Puerto Rico. And yeah, you'll often hear it called by that other name, the more dramatic one, the Devil's Triangle.
That's right. And it's really important to stress how loosely those boundaries are defined. I mean, really loosely. Over the years, different writers have stretched them significantly. So you get this kind of fluid geography. Incidents get included or excluded depending on whose book or article you're reading. Some even try to push it out towards Ireland. But what's crucial to understand is that this isn't an official geographic designation at all. The U.S. Board on Geographic Names, for instance, doesn't list it. So its very existence as a labeled area, it's purely based on the stories told about it. It's more of a concept, really, than a cartographical fact.
Right, so it's not like someone drew a line on a map and officially declared, warning, mystery zone. It really is an urban legend, and every good urban legend has an origin story, doesn't it? So when did this whole idea of a triangle of disappearances actually start? Who first connected those dots?
Well, the earliest suggestion of unusual disappearances in that general Bermuda area actually popped up in 1950. It was in an article by a guy named Edward Van Winkle Jones, writing for the Miami Herald. And the Associated Press picked it up, distributed it widely. So that piece kind of put the idea of strange stuff happening in the region onto people's radar. That was maybe the first tiny seed, the first whisper.
And then, just a couple of years later, that seed really started to sprout, didn't it?
Yes. In 1952, Fate magazine, a publication known for covering strange phenomena, published an article by George X. Sand. It was called Sea Mystery at Our Back Door. And this is a really pivotal moment because Sand was the first one to actually lay out that now familiar triangular area on a map, more or less. He wasn't just talking about isolated incidents anymore, he was hinting at a pattern. He recounted several losses since World War II. He mentioned the disappearance of a tramp steamer, the Sandra, which vanished in April 1950. And he also touched on that really infamous case from December 1945, Flight 19, plus several other aircraft and ships from the late 40s. He started drawing lines, connecting incidents that maybe felt unrelated before.
Okay, so Sand draws the lines, suggests a pattern, and then someone else really runs with it.
Oh, absolutely. That perceived pattern truly exploded onto the scene in 1964. That's when Vincent Gaddis wrote this incredibly influential article for Argosy magazine, another popular men's adventure-type publication. His piece was titled The Deadly Bermuda Triangle. And this was the moment. This was the pivotal point. Incidents like Flight 19 and others were explicitly linked together into this cohesive pattern of strange events, supposedly dating way back to 1840. Gaddis then expanded that article into a full book in 1965 called Invisible Horizons. That gave the idea an even bigger audience.
And once Gaddis opened that door, it sounds like the floodgates just opened.
Totally. Other writers jumped right in, elaborating on his ideas, often embracing and frankly popularizing the most sensational aspects. You had John Wallace Spencer with Limbo of the Lost in 1969, then the big one, Charles Berlitz with the Bermuda Triangle in 1974. And Richard Weiner's The Devil's Triangle, also in 74. These authors, particularly Berlitz, they really leaned into the supernatural stuff. They weren't just reporting. They were crafting a narrative, building the legend. They turned it into the full-blown pop culture phenomenon we know today.
It's interesting how these things build, but the idea of mystery in that area, it wasn't entirely brand new, was it? Our sources mentioned even earlier accounts.
That's a fascinating layer to this. The narrative kind of taps into some much older reports. Christopher Columbus himself, on his first voyage across the Atlantic back in 1492, he recorded seeing strange lights at sea and noted some unusual compass readings while he was sailing through this general region. Now, it's highly unlikely these had anything directly to do with modern disappearances, obviously, but these earliest recorded mysterious phenomena, they definitely feed the popular idea that this has always been an inherently strange, unpredictable place. It sort of set a historical precedent, you could say, for the unexplained.
Okay, so we have the legend taking root, this historical backdrop. But let's talk about the specific incidents that really fueled the fire, the ones that made people genuinely think, whoa, something truly weird is happening here.
Yeah.
You mentioned the Sandra, that steamer from 1950. And interestingly, our sources note that a wreck matching its size and cargo was found in 2020, so maybe a little foreshadowing for our debunking section later.
Yeah.
But the absolute centerpiece, the one everyone knows, has to be Flight 19, right?
Oh, Flight 19 is absolutely central. It's the cornerstone of the modern mystery, no question. This was a training flight. 5 U.S. Navy TBM Avenger torpedo bombers. They disappeared on December 5th, 1945. The flight plan was pretty standard. East from Fort Lauderdale, then north for a bit, then back southwest to base. But they never made it back. And there's that chilling quote often attributed to the flight leader, Lieutenant Charles Taylor. It appeared later in a 1962 American Legion magazine article. Something like, "We cannot be sure of any direction. Everything is wrong, strange. The ocean doesn't look as it should." It just captures that sense of utter disorientation. And then, as if that wasn't enough mystery.
The rescue plane vanished, too.
Exactly. A PBM Mariner search and rescue aircraft sent out specifically to look for Flight 19 also disappeared shortly after takeoff. Went completely silent. This whole incident, maybe more than any other single event, really cemented the Triangle's reputation for, supernatural disappearances.
Absolutely terrifying. 5 bombers, the plane looking for them.
Yeah.
Just gone.
And Flight 19 wasn't the only aerial mystery around that time, was it? We also have the Star Tiger and the Star Ariel.
Right. 2 more big ones. These were Avro Tudor the Fist passenger aircraft operated by British South American Airways. Pretty large planes for the time. The Star Tiger vanished on January 30th, 1948. It was flying from the Azores to Bermuda. And then, almost exactly a year later, January 17th, 1949, the Star Ariel disappeared on a flight from Bermuda to Kingston, Jamaica. So 2 large passenger planes, operated by the same airline, gone without a single trace within about 12 months each other. These events just dramatically amplified the growing aerial mysteries. It really felt like this particular stretch of ocean was somehow actively eating aircraft.
It really paints a picture of something deeply wrong in that region. And there's another one, too, wasn't there? DC-3. Yes. Can't forget the Douglas DC-3, aircraft number NC-1602. On December 28, 1948, this was a charter flight. It had 32 people aboard flying from San Juan, Puerto Rico, heading to Miami, and it just vanished. Like the others, absolutely no trace of the aircraft or its occupants was ever found. So when you pile up these truly tragic and at the time completely unexplained losses, well, it's easy to see how the stage was set for the kind of more fantastical theories that started bubbling up. The sheer lack of wreckage, the lack of definitive answers in these early high-profile cases, it left a huge void. And speculation rushed in to fill it.
Right, so these baffling disappearances piling up,
Yeah.
especially those early ones where just nothing was found. It wasn't long before people started reaching for explanations that went way beyond engine failure or bad weather. This is where the Bermuda Triangle really earns its paranormal reputation. Let's dive into some of the more, imaginative theories that really captured the public's attention. First up, Atlantis, the lost city.
Ah, yes, Atlantis. Good old Atlantis. The theory here, basically, is that some kind of leftover technology, maybe energy crystals or powerful devices from this mythical, super advanced civilization now sunk beneath the waves, is somehow interfering with modern ships and planes, causing them to malfunction or disappear. And what's fascinating is how some proponents tried to connect this ancient legend to something tangible, something you could almost see. Specifically, the Bimini Road. It's this underwater rock formation off the coast of Bimini in the Bahamas. To the untrained eye, it looks kind of like paving stones or maybe the foundation of a wall. Almost man-made. Followers of the psychic Edgar Cayce, for instance, latched onto this. Cayce had predicted evidence of Atlantis would be found near Bimini in 1968. So when the Bimini Road was highlighted around that time, it seemed like slam dunk proof for those who already wanted to believe.
Okay, a submerged road, ancient technology. It definitely sounds compelling. But here comes our first big myth-busting moment, right? What does actual science say about the Bimini Road? Is it Atlantean pavement?
Precisely. While the idea of ancient super tech zapping planes is, cinematic, the scientific consensus is crystal clear. The Bimini Road is natural. It's made of beach rock, formed by natural geological processes. It's a classic example of what scientists call pareidolia.
Pareidolia, like seeing faces in clouds.
Exactly like that. It's that very human tendency to see familiar patterns or shapes in random arrangements. We're wired to find order, so people saw lines and shapes in the rock and interpreted it as a man-made structure. But geologically, nope, it's natural. So sadly for the Atlantis theorists, no ancient death rays seem to be involved.
Okay, scratch Atlantis off the list. What about something a bit more maybe science-y sounding, but still mysterious? Magnetic anomalies. This one comes up all the time. The idea that weird local magnetic fields in the triangle are throwing compasses haywire, sending ships and planes hopelessly off course.
Yeah, that's a hugely popular one, and you hear it constantly in the anecdotal accounts, right? My compass spun wildly or pointed to true north instead of magnetic north. But here's the thing. Repeated scientific investigations using sensitive magnetometers towed by ships and flown in aircraft have simply not found any evidence of unusual, localized magnetic anomalies within the Bermuda Triangle area. They just aren't there, which of course raises the immediate question.
Right. If there's no weird magnetic field, why do people report their compasses acting strangely? What's actually going on?
The answer lies in something fundamental about navigation, something navigators have known and accounted for centuries. Compasses point to magnetic north, not true geographic north, the North Pole. And the difference between the two, called magnetic declination or variation, changes depending on where you are on Earth. There's actually a line, the agonic line, where magnetic north and true north happen to align perfectly. Everywhere else, there is a difference. And this variation isn't static, it shifts over time and location. A compass needle will naturally show different readings as you travel across a large area like the triangle. So someone unfamiliar with this, maybe caught in a storm, disoriented,
Might see their compass reading changing and think something supernatural's happening.
Exactly. It's a normal, predictable phenomenon that experienced navigators factor into their course plotting. The mystery here really stems from a public misunderstanding of basic navigational principles, amplified by fear and disorientation.
That makes a lot of sense. It feels mysterious if you don't know the underlying reason. Okay, but let's push the boat out even further. How about parallel universes? Time warps. These theories get really wild, suggesting the triangle is literally sucking things into another dimension, or maybe zapping them forward or backward in time.
Yes, now we're firmly in the realm of science fiction, aren't we? The idea of a literal hole in space-time, a portal. It's incredibly dramatic. It really highlights the length people will go to find an explanation when something feels utterly inexplicable by conventional means. If you can't explain it here, maybe it's not here anymore. And flowing naturally from that kind of thinking, you get the other perennial favorite.
Don't tell me. Aliens. UFOs.
You got it. UFOs and extraterrestrial intervention. Some theories propose that aliens are abducting ships and planes from the area, perhaps for study, perhaps for more nefarious reasons. And our sources point again to Charles Berlitz. He was instrumental in popularizing these ideas. In his books, he listed all sorts of anomalous or unexplained forces, including alien activity as potential causes for the disappearances. He really threw everything at the wall.
He wasn't just selling books. He was practically selling a whole cosmology of weirdness.
He absolutely was. And this brings up a really important point about the sheer power of storytelling in the media. Authors like Berlitz, like Wiener, they weren't just passively reporting events, they were actively shaping a narrative. They amplified the most bizarre theories, often dramatizing accounts, maybe glossing over inconvenient facts to make the stories more sensational, more terrifying. And they were incredibly successful. They ingrained the Bermuda Triangle deep into the public consciousness, making it a household name, synonymous with mystery and danger.
And it wasn't just the books, was it? I mean, the Bermuda Triangle has been everywhere. Movies, TV shows, documentaries?
Absolutely. From supposedly serious documentaries claiming to finally reveal the truth, to completely fictional thrillers using it as a backdrop for scares. This constant media portrayal just kept reinforcing the legend, often exaggerating details or even inventing new ones for dramatic effect. It ensured that the image of this mysterious, inherently dangerous place became almost universally recognized, part of our collective cultural furniture. It's a prime example of how a compelling story, even one built on shaky foundations, can take root and become accepted as reality by millions.
Okay, so we've waded through the chilling legends, the truly wild theories that captured the public imagination for decades. But for every captivating mystery, there's often a meticulous, sometimes less flashy explanation waiting in the wings. So let's shift gears now. Let's put on our skeptical hats and look at what science really has to say. Because when it comes to debunking the Bermuda Triangle, one name really stands out: Larry Kusche.
Larry Kusche, yes, he's a absolutely critical figure in this whole story. You could call him a pioneer of skeptical inquiry regarding the triangle. His 1975 book, The Bermuda Triangle Mystery, Solved, was a landmark publication. It wasn't just opinion, it was research. He didn't just dismiss the claims out of hand, he did the hard work. He dug into the primary sources. Original Coast Guard reports, Navy investigation files, weather records, newspaper archives from the time. He cross-referenced everything, meticulously comparing the sensational accounts in books like Berlitz with the actual documented facts. His work marked a huge shift away from paranormal speculation towards rigorous, evidence-based investigation. He basically asked, okay, but what really happened?
And what did Kusche find when he started pulling on all those threads? What were his main arguments that began to dismantle this huge myth?
His findings were frankly stunning. They essentially pulled the rug out from under the entire legend. First, and this is probably the most crucial point, he found no statistical anomaly.
No statistical anomaly, meaning?
Meaning the number of ships and aircraft reported missing in the area, commonly called the Bermuda Triangle, was not significantly higher, proportionally, than in any other heavily traveled part of the ocean. It's a busy area. Lots of ships, lots of planes pass through. So yes, incidents happen there, but not at a rate that suggests anything uniquely dangerous or mysterious is going on. It's like being surprised that more accidents happen on a major highway than on a quiet country lane. It's about traffic volume and the inherent risks of sea and air travel.
That's a massive blow to the core idea of the triangle, isn't it? If things aren't disappearing there more often than anywhere else busy,
Yeah.
then the whole premise kind of collapses. So beyond the raw numbers, what about the quality of the stories being told, the specific incidents?
That was his second major finding. Widespread exaggeration and inaccuracy, just rampant errors. Kusche discovered that many claims made by Gaddis, Berlitz, Weiner, and others were either wildly distorted, based on dubious sources, or simply unverifiable when checked against official records. He found numerous specific inconsistencies between, say, Berlitz's dramatic, often terrifying accounts and the actual statements from eyewitnesses or the findings in official investigation reports. A perfect example he cited was the disappearance of Donald Crowhurst, the round-the-world yachtsman. Berlitz presented it as this deep, unsolved mystery, but the evidence was overwhelming that Crowhurst had faked his voyage logs and likely died by suicide. It wasn't a paranormal event at all.
Wow, so it wasn't just sloppy research. It sounds like deliberate misrepresentation in some cases.
It certainly appears that way sometimes. Kusche also found instances where incidents were completely mislocated. They didn't even happen in the triangle. He details one case where Berlitz recounted an ore carrier lost without trace 3 days out of an Atlantic port. Sounds classic triangle, right? Turns out the ship was lost 3 days out of port, but it was a port with the same name in the Pacific Ocean, thousands of miles away.
You're kidding. The wrong ocean.
The wrong ocean. He also found cases where crucial information was simply unreported. A boat might be reported missing in dramatic fashion, but its eventual return to port, maybe days or weeks later, was never mentioned in the mystery books. The mystery was preserved by omitting the resolution.
So facts were conveniently ignored, twisted, or just plain wrong.
Or even invented. Kusche uncovered instances where alleged mysterious disappearances were, in reality, fabricated mysteries. He found a case of a plane supposedly vanishing mysteriously back in 1937. Berlitz included it. Kusche checked contemporary newspaper reports and found the plane had crashed off Daytona Beach, Florida, in full view of hundreds of witnesses on the shore. The wreckage was recovered. It was a known, documented accident, not a vanishing. This just highlights how easily facts could be distorted, ignored, or maybe even made up just to fit the exciting narrative.
And the weather. The mystery books always make it sound like these things happened on calm, beautiful days.
Another key point Kusche made. He found that writers like Berlitz often completely failed to mention storms or severe weather conditions that were happening at the time of a disappearance. They'd describe incidents happening in calm seas when contemporary meteorological records, easily accessible in newspaper archives, clearly showed major storms or rough weather in the area. He would literally just go check the newspapers for the dates of the supposed mysteries and find reports of terrible weather that the mystery writers conveniently left out. So, his overall conclusion was pretty damning and quite simple. The legend of the Bermuda Triangle is essentially a manufactured mystery. It was created and perpetuated by writers who, either deliberately or maybe just through sloppy research and confirmation bias, used misconceptions, faulty reasoning, and a heavy dose of sensationalism. They built a story where, factually, none really existed.
That's incredibly powerful, a manufactured mystery. And it's not just Kusche saying this, right? Official organizations, the ones who actually deal with maritime and aviation incidents, they've weighed in too.
Absolutely. Kusche's skepticism, backed by his research, found echoes in official channels. For example, when the British TV channel, Channel 4, made a documentary called The Bermuda Triangle in 1992, they specifically asked Lloyd's of London, Lloyd's, the huge marine insurance market, right? They asked them if an unusually large number of ships had sunk in the Bermuda Triangle area, and Lloyd's response was definitive. No, large numbers of ships had not sunk there disproportionately. And crucially, Lloyd's does not charge higher insurance rates for vessels passing through that area.
That's a pretty solid real-world indicator, isn't it? If the people whose entire business is calculating risk aren't seeing anything special there, maybe there isn't anything special.
Exactly. Follow the money, right? Furthermore, the United States Coast Guard's own records consistently back up Lloyd's conclusion. The Coast Guard is officially skeptical. They state that their own investigations collect and publish documentation that directly contradicts many of the claims made by the Triangle authors. They use the example of that 1972 tanker explosion, the VA Fog. One Triangle author wrote this dramatic story about how all the bodies vanished except the captain found clutching a coffee cup at his table. Spooky, right? Well, the Coast Guard report includes photographs of the wreck and documentation of recovering several bodies. The author's claims were just false. And connecting back to Kusche's point about mislocation, the VA Fog actually sank off the coast of Texas, nowhere near the Triangle.
Texas? Seriously? Another one not even in the right place.
Yep, it keeps happening. The story gets attached to the Triangle legend even when the geography doesn't fit at all.
Okay, so Coast Guard, Lloyd's. What about other agencies? NOAA, the Navy?
Similar conclusions. NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, attributes most disappearances in the region to environmental factors we'll discuss, like hurricanes, the Gulf Stream, shallow waters in some areas, natural explanations. The U.S. Navy also dismisses any supernatural claims, emphasizing natural causes and, importantly, human error. And even environmental groups weighing in the Worldwide Fund for Nature did a study in 2013 identifying the world's 10 most dangerous waters for shipping. The Bermuda Triangle wasn't even on the list.
Not even in the top 10 most dangerous. That
Not
really
yet.
puts it in perspective. And Benjamin Radford, the scientific paranormal investigator, he made a good point too, didn't he? About finding lost planes.
Yes, Radford highlights something very practical. Finding a small aircraft that goes down in the open ocean is incredibly difficult. The search areas are unbelievably vast. Just because wreckage isn't found immediately or ever doesn't automatically mean something paranormal happened. It usually just means the ocean is huge and deep. He stresses the importance of simply double-checking information, which is exactly what Kusche did and exactly what the creators of the mystery often failed to do, leading to all the sensationalism.
Okay, so if it's not supernatural, not aliens, not Atlantis,
Yeah.
what are the real, natural, explainable phenomena at play in this region? What are the actual risks that could contribute to incidents?
Right. Let's get into the real-world factors. And one absolutely massive one in this part of the Atlantic is the Gulf Stream.
Ah, the Gulf Stream. We learn about it in school, but maybe don't appreciate its power.
Exactly. The Gulf Stream, which is sometimes called the Florida current in that area, is this incredibly powerful, warm ocean current. It originates down in the Gulf of Mexico, flows up through the Straits of Florida, and then heads northeast across the Atlantic. Think of it like a massive, fast-moving river flowing within the ocean. Its surface velocity can reach about 2 meters per second, that's nearly 7 feet per second, or over 4 miles per hour. Now imagine a small plane making an emergency water landing, or a boat losing engine power. This current can grab it and carry it miles away from its last known position very quickly. This makes search and rescue incredibly difficult. Wreckage gets dispersed over vast distances, sometimes hundreds of miles in just a few days. It makes a disappearance seem much more sudden and complete than it might actually be.
That definitely explains why finding wreckage would be so hard, or why it might turn up unexpectedly far away, fueling those mystery theories. Okay, beyond ocean currents, what about us? Human factors, because people make mistakes.
Oh, absolutely. Human error is consistently cited in official investigation reports as a primary or contributing factor in the loss of aircraft and vessels worldwide. Not just in the Triangle. Sometimes it's poor judgment, sometimes it's stubbornness. Our sources mention the case of Harvey Conover, a businessman who lost his yacht, the Revenant, in 1958. He apparently deliberately sailed into a major storm south of Florida. That wasn't a paranormal event. It was a tragic outcome of a decision made against better advice. So you have navigational errors, misreading instruments, maybe skipping maintenance, fatigue, poor decision-making under pressure. All these human factors play a huge role in accidents at sea and in the air.
And speaking of pressure, the weather in that region.
Mm-hmm.
It's not exactly known for being placid all the time, is it? It's right in Hurricane Alley.
Precisely. The Bermuda Triangle region is extremely prone to violent weather, especially hurricanes and tropical storms. These are incredibly powerful systems born in the tropical Atlantic, and they have historically caused devastating losses. Way back in 1502, Francisco de Bodella's Spanish fleet got hammered by a hurricane there, the first recorded major hurricane disaster in the New World. Sank 20 ships, killed maybe 500 people. Many, many Atlantic hurricanes track right through the Triangle area as they move north or recurve. And think about the past. Before sophisticated weather satellites and forecasting, ships often had very little warning. They could literally sail right into the path of a monster storm unknowingly.
I just can't imagine the terror of that. Clear skies one moment, then suddenly, unimaginable fury.
And it's not just the big named hurricanes. The region is known for sudden, violent thunderstorms and squalls that can seemingly appear out of nowhere. Our sources mention phenomena like microbursts or powerful downdrafts of cold air. This was suspected in the sinking of the tall ship Pride of Baltimore in 1986. The crew described the wind suddenly shifting and rocketing from maybe 20 mile per hour to gusts between 60 and 90 mile per hour, just bam. A weather expert described it like a bomb of cold air hitting the surface and exploding outwards. That kind of sudden, localized, extreme wind shear could absolutely capsize a vessel or cause an aircraft to lose control instantly, explaining a rapid sinking or crash without even time for a distress call.
Like a bomb. That paints a picture. Terrifying, but entirely natural. Okay, but there's one more really fascinating natural explanation that got a lot of buzz for a while. Methane hydrates. Sounds like science fiction, but it's real geology.
Ah, yes. Methane hydrates. This theory gained quite a bit of traction. It proposes that vast deposits of methane hydrates, basically methane gas trapped in ice-like crystals on the continental shelves, could, under certain circumstances, cause ships to sink very rapidly. The proposed mechanism is quite intriguing. If something, maybe an undersea landslide or earthquake, were to destabilize these deposits, it could trigger a massive release of methane gas bubbles rising to the surface. Laboratory experiments have actually shown that these rising bubbles can significantly decrease the density of the water, so much so
That a ship could literally lose buoyancy, just sink like a stone into fizzy water.
That's the idea. Scale models and tanks have shown ships sinking incredibly fast when subjected to this kind of bubbling. It offers a potential explanation for sudden, apparently inexplicable disappearances where no wreckage is found because the ship sinks quickly and deeply.
That sounds incredibly plausible for some of those really baffling cases. A scientific vanishing act.
It is a scientifically plausible hypothesis for rapid sinking events. And the USGS confirms there are large stores of these hydrates worldwide, including off the southeastern U.S. coast, near the Triangle area, on the Blake Ridge. However, and this is the crucial caveat that often gets lost in the popular retelling, the USGS also states that, based on current geological evidence, no large releases of gas hydrates are believed to have occurred in the Bermuda Triangle area for at least the past 15,000 years.
15,000 years. Okay, so maybe not a factor in recent disappearances then.
Exactly. While the potential exists geologically, there's no evidence it's an active phenomenon causing problems for modern shipping or aviation in the Triangle. It's another case where a cool scientific possibility gets picked up and amplified, but the essential context, like the fact that it probably hasn't happened recently, gets omitted, making it seem like a much more relevant explanation than it likely is.
Okay, so we've journeyed through the history, the myths, the science. Now let's bring it all together. Let's revisit some of those famous incidents we talked about earlier, but look at them through this new lens, skeptical, fact-based. How about HMS Atlanta, that British training ship from way back in 1880, often cited as an early Triangle victim? What's the real story?
HMS Atalanta, yes. A sail training ship vanished with her whole crew after leaving Bermuda for England. Definitely part of the early lore. But the most accepted explanation, supported by historical research like David Francis Rain's work in 1997, points to a powerful storm that crossed her path. Compounding that was the fact that her crew consisted mainly of very inexperienced trainees, making the ship potentially much more vulnerable in severe weather. So, the evidence strongly refutes the mystery angle and points squarely towards tragic, but understandable maritime disaster due to weather and possibly crew inexperience.
Makes sense. Then there's the really big one, the USS Cyclops. Huge loss of life for the U.S. Navy, non-combat. What's the consensus there?
The USS Cyclops' disappearance in 1918, with 306 souls aboard, is indeed one of the biggest mysteries in U.S. naval history. Vanished somewhere after leaving Barbados. Theories flew around for years: storms, capsizing, maybe even captured or sunk by a German U-boat, though wartime records didn't support that. But the most likely cause, especially when considering the later disappearances of her sister ships.
The Proteus and Nereus.
Exactly. Both also vanished in the North Atlantic during World War II while carrying similar heavy cargoes of metallic ore. This strongly suggests a structural issue. Cyclops was heavily laden with dense manganese ore, possibly beyond safe limits or improperly loaded, leading to structural failure and a likely rapid sinking, perhaps in rough seas. It points to a design or loading vulnerability, not something paranormal.
Okay, structural failure. What about that classic ghost ship tale, the Caroline Deering? Found run aground and abandoned off Cape Hatteras in 1921. That just screams mystery.
The Caroline Deering certainly paints an eerie picture. A large sailing schooner, sail set, grounded on Diamond Shoals, crew completely gone. The FBI did investigate extensively. They looked into piracy, mutiny, even Bolshevik sympathizers or rum runners potentially involved. They ruled all those out. But the fact that the specific cause of abandonment remained undetermined doesn't automatically mean it was supernatural. It just means they lacked conclusive evidence back in 1921. The most probable scenario is that the crew abandoned ship during a severe storm or other emergency, perhaps taking to lifeboats, and the ship simply drifted ashore on its own. We just don't have the final chapter because no survivors were found. A historical cold case, essentially.
Right. Undetermined doesn't equal unexplainable. Now, let's circle back to the absolute cornerstone. Flight 19. 5 Navy bombers. The rescue plane. The story that launched 1,000 theories. What did the official Navy investigation actually conclude?
When you strip away the sensationalism that built up over the years, the official Navy investigation attributed the loss of Flight 19 primarily to navigational error on the part of the flight leader, Lieutenant Taylor. He seems to have become disoriented, possibly misidentified landmarks after his compasses may have malfunctioned, though not necessarily due to external anomalies, and led his flight further out over the Atlantic in deteriorating weather instead of back towards Florida. Ultimately, they believe the planes simply ran out of fuel and ditched in the open ocean, a tragic series of errors and misfortune.
And the PBM Mariner, the search plane.
The PBM Mariner had a known, documented history of being prone to catastrophic explosions from fuel vapor leaks, especially when heavily loaded with fuel, which it absolutely would have been for a long-range search mission. It disappeared in stormy conditions, and the most likely explanation accepted by naval analysts was a mid-air explosion. Again, tragic but explainable based on the aircraft's known issues and the operational circumstances. No need for mystery rays or time warps.
Okay, so pilot error and mechanical vulnerability. What about those 2 British passenger planes, the Star Tiger and Star Ariel, vanishing within a year? That seemed incredibly suspicious.
The loss of the Star Tiger and Star Ariel was certainly alarming at the time, but again, context is key. Both were Avro Tudor the Fife aircraft, and crucially, for those specific routes they were flying, they were operating right at the very edge of their maximum fuel range. This left almost zero margin for error. Even a slight navigational mistake, an unexpected strong headwind, or a minor equipment malfunction could mean the difference between reaching their small island destinations, Bermuda or Jamaica, and running out of fuel over the open ocean. The official inquiries couldn't pinpoint the exact cause for either due to lack of wreckage, but fuel exhaustion or catastrophic failure linked to flying at extreme range and potentially challenging conditions remain the most logical explanations. Risks inherent in the technology and operations of the time.
Operating on fumes, basically. And the Douglas DC-3 from 1948. 32 people vanished. Any clearer picture there?
That one, the loss of the DC-3 NC 16002 en route from Puerto Rico to Miami, remains officially undetermined. The Civil Aeronautics Board investigation concluded there was simply insufficient information available to determine the probable cause. But again, as with the Deering, insufficient information isn't code for aliens did it. It reflects the immense difficulty of investigating incidents over vast stretches of deep ocean, especially before modern flight data recorders and satellite tracking. It's a mystery born from a lack of evidence, not evidence of the supernatural.
Here's another famous one that always gets trotted out, the Connemara V. The story usually goes it was found adrift, crew vanished after surviving 3 hurricanes, found in perfectly calm seas. Eerie stuff.
Ah, the Connemara IV. This is a perfect example of how the story gets twisted over time to become more mysterious. The reality, according to research, including a letter cited by Richard Weiner himself from someone familiar with the event, is quite different and much less spooky. The yacht did go adrift, yes, but it dragged its moorings and was swept out to sea because a hurricane was approaching. It was found abandoned, yes, but not after mysteriously weathering multiple storms, only for the crew to vanish in calm weather. It was simply an unmanned vessel torn loose by storm conditions. The dramatic embellishments about surviving hurricanes and calm seas were added later to fit the legend.
So the spooky details were just made up or distorted. Significant difference.
Yeah.
Okay, one last one. Those KC-135 Strato tankers in 1963 supposedly crashed in 2 separate locations miles apart.
Right, the colliding KC-135s. On August 28, 1963, 2 of these U.S. Air Force tanker aircraft did collide and crash into the Atlantic. That part is, too, a tragic accident. But some Triangle authors latched onto initial reports suggesting 2 distinct crash sites, separated by maybe 160 miles, implying something incredibly bizarre must have happened after the collision. However, Larry Kusche dug into the actual unclassified Air Force investigation report. It revealed that the debris field initially reported as a potential second crash site was investigated by a search and rescue ship, and turned out to be nothing more than a large mass of seaweed and driftwood that had gotten tangled up around an old weather buoy. It just looked like wreckage from the air initially.
Seaweed, not a second crash site.
Just seaweed and junk. It perfectly illustrates how easily debris can be misinterpreted in the ocean, how vast the search areas are, and how quick people were to jump to mysterious conclusions instead of waiting for confirmation.
Okay. After meticulously unpacking all of this, the history, the myths, the science, revisiting the incidents, what is the bottom line? What's the real risk takeaway from the Bermuda Triangle? If someone's planning a cruise or a flight through there, should they be worried?
The conclusion, based on all the evidence, is really quite clear and maybe even a bit anticlimactic for mystery lovers. The Bermuda Triangle is, factually, no more dangerous than any other heavily traveled stretch of ocean. Full stop. Its infamous reputation is built almost entirely on exaggeration, misinterpretation of natural events, selective reporting, outright errors, and sensationalism. It's not based on any verifiable, unusual phenomena happening there at a disproportionate rate. It's a busy shipping lane, a busy aviation corridor. And tragically, accidents happen in busy corridors all over the world.
So it's not about avoiding some mystical vortex. It's really about understanding the standard risks of sea and air travel, which just happen to occur in that area because lots of ships and planes go through it.
Precisely. The real culprits behind disappearances in this region are the same ones responsible for incidents everywhere else on the planet's oceans and airways. Human error, miscalculation, poor judgment, fatigue, mechanical failure, engines quitting, structural problems, equipment malfunctions, and extreme weather hurricanes, sudden squalls, massive waves. These are the mundane, yet often tragic realities of operating complex machinery in a powerful and unpredictable natural environment. There's nothing uniquely sinister about the triangle itself.
Which means the ultimate lesson here isn't about being scared of a particular patch of water. It's about respect for the ocean, respect for the weather, and the absolute importance of safety and preparation.
Exactly. It's a powerful reminder of the need for stringent safety protocols in maritime and aviation industries. Proper navigation techniques, meticulous maintenance of vessels and aircraft, good crew training, and robust weather forecasting and heating warnings. Being prepared for the unpredictable power of nature is key, wherever you are. The deep dive into the Bermuda Triangle ultimately doesn't reveal a paranormal mystery. Instead, it reveals how easily myths can be constructed, and it underscores the very real, though thankfully rare, dangers inherent in travel, driven by understandable, if sometimes complex and tragic, natural and human factors. Hashtag outro.
Wow, what a journey that was. From those chilling legends and whispered tales to a thoroughly debunked myth. It's a powerful reminder, isn't it? While the idea of some mysterious supernatural force is incredibly compelling, the truth often lies in things we can understand. Sometimes tragic things, like weather and human error, but understandable nonetheless. And it highlights the power of careful investigation over just accepting a good story.
Absolutely. So, What does this all really mean for you, listening?
I think it means that sometimes the most astonishing truths aren't hidden in the supernatural. They're found in the meticulous examination of the natural world, the laws of physics, oceanography, meteorology, and yeah, unfortunately, sometimes in basic human fallibility. This whole Bermuda Triangle saga is just a fantastic case study in how stories can take root, become so ingrained in our culture that they feel like solid fact, until someone actually takes the time to ask the critical questions and check the receipts, so to speak.
That's a really fascinating final thought. If the Bermuda Triangle, this icon of the unexplained, is largely a manufactured mystery, what other popular unexplained phenomena out there might benefit from the same kind of rigorous, skeptical deep dive? What other stories might we all be believing simply because they're repeated so often without ever truly unpacking them? Something to think about. Until next time, keep digging, keep asking questions, and keep exploring.